Hello, welcome everyone, and hopefully we'll have a few more filter in. I'm just going to introduce myself and do a quick introduction and housekeeping here, and then I will leave it to our webinar hosts. My name is Amelia. I work for Demco. I'm part of the Demco content and creative team, and I'm really excited to welcome you all to this webinar of what gets forgotten in library design. We have two awesome presenters today, Shannon McClintock Miller. She is the district teacher librarian at Van Meter School in Iowa. She's an international speaker and consultant. You may know her from Future Ready Librarians. She's the creator of the Library Voice and an author. And she's been doing some really great webinars here on Demco. If you have not already seen some of those, there are recordings of them, so you can go back and check them out anytime. Our other guest speaker is Dr. Robert Dillon. He is a designer, educator, and learning environment thought leader. He's an author and consultant and a longtime collaborator with Demco. So very excited to have him. You've probably seen his name around before as well. And before I turn it over to them, I will just let you know, Shannon's experiencing some issues with her camera, so she will be off camera today. You will be hearing her voice as she interacts with Dr. Robert Dillon. This presentation is being recorded. It will be available on Demco's website in about a week. Anybody who is registered, if you have to drop off early, anything like that, you will get an email reminding you when it's available. If you miss the email for any reason, you can head over to the Ideas site at Demco and find all of our past webinars and also register for any upcoming ones. There will be some time, potentially some time for Q&A. If we do get to questions at the end, you can feel free to submit those. And if we don't get to them, we are planning a second webinar next month. We will address the questions then. So I will turn off my camera and hand it over to Dr. Robert Dillon and Shannon McClintock Miller.
Okay, so as we get started, I'll just say a few friendly reminders. Our webinar will be about 30 minutes. We'll have time at the end for questions. And as Amelia said, you're going to be getting the slides and the recording afterwards, but I also put the links in this slide for the past 4 webinars in this series. And so at the end, we'll share a QR code and also a bit.ly that you can get to the slides too, so you can see all of the past webinars. And so as we kick off, before I hand it over to my good friend Bob, I'm going to just say that I'm really excited about this because we're going to talk about things that we focus on that often get forgotten in our library design. And so I'm really excited about this conversation, and I can't wait to hear your questions and to see what you guys think too.
Well, it is good to be here, and I get to finally present with Shannon. Like, it's been a lifelong goal. It's been on my bucket list. I can now check it off. So I have that going for me. Hopefully we'll have a good time today. Hope everyone had a good school day. It is beautiful here. I'm home in St. Louis, Missouri. We've had a beautiful day, and I promise as soon as we're done here, I'm going to go back outside and get some vitamin D. I hope many of you are also craving an extra hour of light and getting over what is a hard thing in daylight savings time. So anyway, it's good to be here. I get a chance to help librarians design their spaces all over the country through my work, and I've just loved it. I was a middle school principal and a technology director, but really this space design work is where I've found an incredible passion over the last 10 years. So just gonna throw some initial pictures out. This is one of the libraries that I helped to design, and you're probably saying, where are the books? And sometimes people think I'm the person coming to take the books from the librarians, but no, this was just one section of the library. But my favorite part was the amazing student artwork that was in this library. So I just wanted to show you that, give you a sense of just this library here before we went to the next one. Yeah, and then the other piece that I love and when I'm designing libraries is really thinking from the walls out. Sometimes we think about the furniture first, but we don't think about where is everything going to go. I love libraries that have lots of different verbs involved with them. Love to read, love to listen, love to think. but also love to make, create, and design. And I love the work that Demco does on that aspect of their furnishings around create, make, and design. You'll see some more of those pictures as we go. And then I do know that design is an imperfect science. So this is a library space that a school designed. And I was a part of this after the fact. And they said, please help our students and teachers learn how to use this space we built. And so I would just say that we really do have to be thoughtful in the design process, because sometimes we only get one shot at it. And sometimes we make these types of decisions and they aren't friendly, they don't last over time, and they're not sustainable. And all of us have been in libraries where you're like, why in the world did they do that? Or, oh my goodness, that's going to be there for the next 20 or 30 years, even after this library becomes something different. Just a couple more pictures, and then I'll turn it over to Shannon to tell a story about the library that she's currently working on. I love both early childhood libraries, elementary libraries, middle and high school libraries. I think that they can be the heart of a school. And, you know, I love things like big graphics and natural light as a part of that. And I know some of you are saying, have you seen my library? I have neither, but rest assured, there'll be some ideas for you here as well today. And then finally, just another piece. Now, I would have never picked these colors, but I was at this amazing library where a student ambassador, walked me through this entire library, talking about the purposeful nature of all the zones in the library. And that's what I wish, is that I can go into any school, grab any student in the building, say, take me to your library and tell me about how it works in here, what's supposed to happen. And I do think that when we've told our story well, any student in the building can really unpack a library for visitors as we go. So let me toss that back to Shannon, I believe.
Oh, you have another.
That's okay, we'll let that one go.
All right.
Oh, keep going, you're good.
Okay.
I told enough stories for now.
But I like to see the pictures. It gives a little inspiration. So thank you for sharing those. I love that you had somebody show you around that library, and I'm sure that the kids absolutely were so proud and loved it so much. So I think that's so wonderful. And I just wanted to set the stage to tell you where I am in my journey in our school and in our library. I've been at Van Meter for 19 years. This is my 19th year. And it's been so fun to go into different spaces in our school. I have been in an old kindergarten room. Our library's been on the stage for a little bit. Our library currently is in the old music room that we turned into the library with our addition that was probably now almost like 7 years ago, maybe. And the space that we're in is a super cozy, welcoming, wonderful space that I share now with our STEM teacher. And it's a great place for not only, you know, having the kids come and get comfy and read and find books, but also we have our STEM class going on in there. And one reason is because we're running out of room at Van Meter. But the awesome thing is that we are building onto our school. And so our space that houses not only our kids throughout the day when they come to check out books and they come to the library and they come to STEM, but also family and parent meetings and all kinds of different things that we bring into our space. And so with this new addition, these things that we do, you know, not only in our library, but outside of our library walls too, with displays that might be in the hallway. We're getting ready right now for March Madness, which I love, that takes place outside in the hallway. But even things like passive programming, because of our space and the way that we run our library, a lot of it is even outside within our walls of our library and in our hallways and other spaces within our school. But I'm so excited because we're building on to our school again. It has started outside. They have like the footings poured and everything ready to go. And I have worked from day one with our architectural team and the people within my building to create a space for our library. And what I'm really excited about is that it's going to really be in the center of our school. And I've always liked to think that we have built, regardless of where we're at, if we're in an old kindergarten room or a music room or wherever, that it's the heart of our school. But I'm excited that it's going to actually be in the physical middle of our school now, where kids will pass through all throughout the day. And it will be a space that ties into through garage doors to our STEM and our art and our maker space and even our music room. And so it's going to be really fun and neat to see kind of how that progresses. And so when we talked about ideas for our next webinars and we talked about this topic, I was so thrilled to be able to not only, think and kind of really dig into where we're at, but also because I really highly respect and love the ideas that Bob has too. And so I think this conversation is going to give me so many more ideas today, and I can't wait to learn as well too as we go.
Yeah, before we jump forward, Shane, let me ask you a question. You said passive programming, and I think I know in context what that means. How do you think, well, tell me what you do around that, and then also, how do you think that'll be affected by your new space?
Well, things like, like a this or that box or a stick together poster that kids may become, or maybe they're creating a bookmark or coloring or, putting a puzzle together, anything that they can come do. I think that how it will be affected by our new space is that it will happen even more in our library because right now, since our space is small and we have STEM almost all throughout the day when kids aren't in there checking out books, that we're going to have little cubbies and spaces and little special places that kids can go to really open up how much we have them in our library. And, the more they're in our library, the more they see books and can talk to us about it and be with their friends and have those conversations around anything that they want to. And so I think that will be a neat thing of what it brings to our space. Like, what more can we bring to that community that we're building in our library?
Yeah, and I think that's a real opportunity in any, it doesn't need to be a new library, but like historic library, legacy library, small micro libraries, the opportunities that you have to have small activities, little things, but there has to be a space for that. And so the trade-off there is, can I give up the bottom of that shelf? Can I clear that off? Can I use a table? But I do think it's important that as students come in, and I think a design mistake in some of these libraries is that we don't have this ability to kind of rotate through different types of activities. We can't keep it fresh because we don't have a flexible table that we can roll in and out. We don't have a shelf that can move in and out, or things can't be rotated through that. So I'm excited to see in your new design, you have a lot of that type of furniture that can help with that. So one of the things we wanted to talk about, oh, go ahead, Shannon.
I just said, I'm really excited about that part.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think as we dive in here, one of the things we wanted to talk about were just some pitfalls that we see, patterns that some librarians fall into. And this isn't a matter of like guilt and shame time. Like if you're like, ooh, I make that mistake, it's all good, it happens. But we see these as great opportunities for libraries to continue to move forward. And really one of the first ones here is this idea. I do think that libraries in general don't have as much signage wayfinding, zones, and identifying markers as it could. And what seems to happen in this first one is librarians been in there a long time. They know how to use the different spaces in the library. They've said it so many times to so many groups over the years. It's the typical teacher thing. Did I say that to seventh period? I know I said at some point in time today, but how do we make sure that we keep fresh what's supposed to happen and where it's supposed to happen in the library? Realizing that I work at some schools where 20 or 30% of their students are new throughout the school year. They have that much turnover. And in doing so, if you set it in August, you haven't set it to 20% of all the student bodies. So how do you keep repeating yourself in a way that doesn't come off as she's saying it again or he's saying it again, and instead just keeping those norms and routines fresh, making sure that we have consistent signage that explains what's supposed to happen there. And even in some schools, one of the projects for the student design team is to create short videos. This is what happens in this zone. This is what's supposed to happen over here. And there's QR codes that allow students to access what's supposed to happen in certain places. Do you some of that, Shannon, in your work?
Oh
Have you
yeah,
seen it, done it? Yeah.
definitely. And like a lot of people, not just me, like we share our space, with other like parts of our day or other teachers or other specials. Like there's all kinds of, different things that we think about. And so even though I'm in a small space that I absolutely love because it's our library, like we've thought really thoughtfully about things like signage, making sure that kids can find exactly what they need, making sure that teachers can, and how we can like direct them to not only these spaces within our walls of our library, but even our spaces that we have within our hallways. We have all these pop-up libraries around our school, and how they can navigate these things that we might have, I think is just so important, regardless of the size or where your library's at, or all those things, just making it just so helpful to everybody within your school, I think is one of our big goals that we have.
Yeah, I was in a library the other day that had a lot of pictures of kids doing what was supposed to happen in that area of the library. And I know we make the assumption that people know, but imagine all of the visitors, all of the adults, all of the school leaders that come through when there aren't kids in the library. It's a way of actually showing off your library in images when no one's there. So I've loved seeing and it's both a behavioral reminder, but it's also a celebration of what happens in there. And I think the other thing for me that I'd like to see is as much in the way of 2D and 3D art that I can see. And I know that many librarians weren't trained to be museum docents and don't think of themselves as the curator of an art gallery. But wow, at the heart of the school, if there's inspiration and beauty, that can elevate things. So that can be community art, that can be teacher-made art, that can be student-made art, that can be great photography. It doesn't have to be something that you're spending your library budget on. But my favorite libraries are the ones that have a lot of art in them.
I couldn't agree more. It's, even though, again, like we don't have a lot of empty like real estate within our library because every little piece is, filled, especially right now with the needs that we have. But, any chance that we have, I tell, because I'm in a school with preschool to 12th grade. And so any chance I get to welcome art projects in, put them on top of shelves, like hang them up outside the library. We have a case. And just yesterday, our 5th graders, they're getting ready. They do this amazing production every year, and they're going to start working on it. And they do the sets, they do the costumes, they do all the acting, the music. It's amazing. And I told our STEM teacher, I said, we will empty the books off of the shelves, like use the top of the shelves to like highlight the work that they're doing. Put up the props that they're making. And I couldn't agree more, because I think that that just is such a great way. We don't have a lot of opportunities in schools to really like have kids shine and showcase the things that they do, and the library is the perfect place to do that. And so I love that. That's going to be something that's a big thing for us. You know, when I was talking to architects, like places for open, you know, open shelving places, things that they can put on top. How do we attach things to walls really easily? And so already a big part of what I'm thinking for our library space.
Yeah, so before we jump to the strategies for flexibility and creativity, which is our next section, I just think also, though, we have to be really thoughtful about this, because I've been in libraries where I visited and I went back a decade later and the same pictures up, the same sculptures up. So before you put things up, hey, the idea is going to be it's going to be up for a year, and then I'm going to review if it still needs to be there. I'm going to wait for that student to graduate from this school or this school district, and then it's going to come down. It's going to be a donation to their graduation party. I don't know what your strategy is, but we can also get stuck. And I know that we don't want to be rotating that stuff all the time, and we want to do it in a sustainable way, but we have to have a strategy that says we don't become just a collection point for stuff, that we are putting up things that are inspirational and beautiful and rotating that over time.
Well, and that's a good way to also get kids involved, because they would love to be part of a committee like that. And so, you know, put that on a committee, or have them, maybe there's even like an art club at your school, and then they can kind of guide and lead that too within your library.
Yeah, let's jump ahead here just a couple of slides and talk about that student design team. And I think that as we do, this has been a success everywhere I've gone. Every time I've had a chance to coach librarians, work with them in professional development, or just review pictures of their libraries. So before we jump, let me just say that if anybody on here wants to send me pictures of their library and ask for feedback, or say, what would you do? Or do you have some quick wins? Please do. I would love it. It's one of my favorite things to do. You'll probably just get a nice little narration over your images or video that you send me. But it's always been a win for every librarian to say, you know what, I have a student design team. So if that's a K-5 building, maybe it's a student in every grade level. In middle school, maybe it's a half a dozen students. At the high school level, you're not only asking the students that are always the frequent flyers in the library, we want them on the team, but also we want to get some voices about folks that don't come in the library. So rounding out that team and then figuring out what makes sense. They probably don't want to come and just say what's wrong with the library. You don't want a complaining session. What you want to do is give them a problem to solve. How can we rearrange that furniture? What would you add to that space over there? How could you make this a more creative place? So those prompts that we give to these groups can be a really important piece to make sure that we stay flexible and stay creative in what we're doing. Shannon, have you used the design team?
You know, not so much necessarily like for our new building, not yet, our new library, but we'll definitely be getting kids involved. But we have used it for things throughout, you know, like even we have, like I said, these pop-up libraries around our school, and our kids help with that, like what's on it. I mean, it's an extension of our library. And so things, you know, where to put it and how to take care of these things, how to switch things out, like all those things, we always make sure that we're listening to our students. But I love hearing, you know, what kids, it's their space. And so I love hearing what they have to say, and just how even having them, you know, make things for your library to really just make it unique and a celebration of learning and reading, I think is just so great. So again, one of my favorite things to do is to include kids in that part.
Yeah, and the other thing, as you jump forward here, the other thing I do with the student design team is I show them pictures of libraries. What do you like about this? So they're not complaining about your library. They're saying, oh, I really like this, or I really don't like that. So if you're in a need for 100 images of libraries, let us know that as well. I have a big gallery I can send you. That's a good use of that design team as well. But the next piece that I want to mention is this idea about a heat map. I know that museums do this really well. I've had an opportunity to work with some people that are museum curators, and I think that there's some good library ideas that come from them, but they know how people move through their space. And you probably do, but I can just tell you is that as you orchestrate learning, as you're busy checking out books, helping a student, meeting with small groups, getting something set up, you lose track of how organic people move through your space. So my encouragement is to videotape a period of time. It can be all day if you want. It can be half a day. It can be an hour. You don't have to watch it at 1x speed. You can watch it at 6x speed and move through and see how people move through your space. See if there's something that's in the way. See if there's something that isn't being accessed that you thought should be accessed because it's hard to get to or people can't see it. It's a great way to really deeply observe how your library is functioning. Yeah, Shannon, what other strategies you have around kind of keeping things creative in the library?
Well, I think that part is so interesting to me, and I couldn't wait to hear what we talked about in this section because I mean, of course I think about those things. I mean, we're in a space right now where there's 2 doors, and I mean, we have things going on all the time to, really manage like the current library that we're at with another class, all day long, too going on. And so we think about, the passage of like our kids and how they're using it. And one thing that's been really interesting to me is even how the new library will be is there'll be a hallway going right through the center, a walkway that will be busy and, great all the time. And I know that really scares and intimidates some people when we talk about that, but I find it to be really exciting because I want it to be, an active space and a space that is seen and constantly used. And so it's fascinating to me to hear, even setting up a video camera and watching kids, I think is such good practice. And so something really to think about.
Yeah, and I think of like how people move through an airport. It's a long
Yeah.
corridor, but there's ways that people stop and there's things that people look at. And I just think that, man, as a librarian, you have all of these tangential things where people move through spaces that you can say, oh, I can learn from that. See how they put that sign there that kind of angled people that way, or that's what people notice and they don't notice that. I think there's a lot to be said for kind of this, studying your interaction in any space. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the idea about just accessibility in the library and inclusivity in the library. I think that those are really important. I've learned recently, and I'm just gonna throw this out before I toss it back to you, that we have lots of students that have diagnosed sensory issues, right? And part of those, some of those students are on the spectrum autism, some are other, but we have lots of individuals, and I think I find myself here, and maybe you do as well, that we have sensory annoyances. And then, we can't fix all of those as the librarian, like for each student, but an awareness of what those sensory annoyances are can be really helpful in making sure that we have safe, belonging, welcoming types of spaces in our library. And so I'm always kind of now thinking about not so much students that have disabilities there, but all of these other sensory annoyances. How can we chip back at those? I think that's really important. And as I looked at Shannon's new library, one of those was that has some coherence in the color. And one of the sensory annoyances that we can have is this visual overload. Our library can look like the state fair and not like a place that is put together and coherent when it comes to color.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that, because it's funny because in our library, this last one that we had when we had our addition, there's this green color that's in the scheme of things. And one of the first things that I said when we were designing this new space was like, I'd really like to keep the green out, because our colors like throughout our building are blue and white and, you know, wood and things like that, like different finishes. And it's amazing what that, I think, just will, I don't know, bring maybe some, a little bit more like calmness, a little bit more like it will look the same throughout. And I'm excited for that, because we add other things, you know, with colors of books and things that we put in our library and different, you know, just maker stuff, all kinds of things that we have a lot going on anyway. And so I think making spaces too, like thinking very thoughtfully about, this is where we can get our kids involved about what they need, you know, like a soft place to read, or do they like to stand up? Do they like to be by themselves? Do they like to be with a group at a table? You know, all these things that we like to think about. One thing that was really interesting when we did our the library, the new one, is that there is a place that there's kind of some round circles. And I loved that they kept it open, because even a child in a wheelchair could go in that space and read. And so it's a big place that it has comfy seating for kids maybe on the floor, but can easily be moved to, that a child in a wheelchair could go in there as well. So seeing things like that just make my heart so happy that it's going to be for all of our kids.
Yeah, and I have a good friend who's the librarian at the Missouri School of the Blind. And the different things that he does with spacing of his furniture, where color breaks, where certain carpet goes to tile, what he does with signage. I just think we have a lot to learn that can be universalized, right? Like all these universal design pieces that work in that. I go, oh, that would work in a lot of libraries. That would be great for individuals that struggle with gross motor, or that'd be great for students that because of their body shape, they struggle to move through the library tables and chairs or whatever that is. And so, yeah, I think just continuing to think about those two issues and knowing that you're not just solving for the students that are right in front of you and have visible needs, but you're also solving for students that might have some invisible needs that we have to anticipate a little bit better. And then
Yeah,
along with that, I think, you know, the two things that I put up here in this category, one is about keeping displays fresh. And one of the things that I'd love to see in libraries and throughout schools is just making sure that the items that we put up on visual displays that people are supposed to read from 6 feet away, 10 feet away, 20 feet away, if we want them to be able to access that information from that far away, we have to make sure the size of the font on the display is big enough. And so when you put up a display, you have to ask that question: how far away from that display do I want people to access the information that's on that display? And just make sure that you do that so we can actually access the information. And then the other thing is, one of the things that I work with librarians that have really small libraries, and they say, I don't know how to give more room between things back. One of the things we do have to examine is the adult only spaces in libraries. And sometimes that circulation desk grows and grows and grows. It like consumes the library because it becomes the office and that area and this area. So we do have to be careful that our adult only spaces aren't chopping into spaces that we can design for accessibility and inclusivity as well.
yeah, very good points.
Yeah, and let's jump to the last section, I think, here, and just a few more words from both of us, really about collaboration and creativity. So I think libraries done well, right, have opportunities for kids to create and collaborate. And I know that that's just probably a good celebration for everyone on the call, everyone listening to the recording. You're like, I have both of those things. I know many of our libraries do, but we should call them out. We should keep them fresh. We should make sure that it gives students an opportunity to practice those skills of working together. Students need as many reps as they can get. And one of the things that gets in the way can be technology. And so making sure that we have a great balance between collaboration, creativity, and what might be consumption with technology. So Shannon, how do you handle both the technology piece in your library and that conversation, and then what things do you do to promote collaboration and creativity?
Well, I'm glad that we're talking about this because I think now, most of us have been in a one-to-one, environment within our school buildings. And oftentimes our libraries are the place that our kids can kind of take, a break from that and be creative and use their hands and their mind to do things. And even if we're using technology, like how can we like mash it up to where they're actually taking a break and doing things that maybe they don't have an opportunity to do within their classroom. I also am a huge advocate for librarians being able to bring that to our classrooms too, and bring that chance for kids to be creative. I also have an art education degree, so I'm very passionate about this, but I love technology. I mean, that's a passion of mine too. And so I think that libraries, they really have an opportunity, if it is an interactive display, if it is something like through passive programming, if it's a stick together poster up, like all these places and things that we can do to just bring those chances for kids to be creative. And also the collaboration, having a chance to sit with a friend and do a puzzle or play a game or color, anything that we can think of that they enjoy, that they can even just talk to each other or maybe just be quiet without their technology, is so important in our libraries. And one of my favorite, ways to be a librarian is to give that to our kids and also to our teachers too, give them a little break from all that we do through technology as well.
Yeah, and just a final encouragement before I hand it back to Shannon to wrap us up is that I know that most of us as librarians and as educators never thought that would be our own director of marketing, but I really do believe that librarians these days need to say, here's our mission, here's what we're doing, here's our story, here's the images of that story, and I'm going to tell it to you until you're nauseous in hearing about it, because it takes a lot of repetition for people to actually hear message these days. So stay on message, stay on message, stay on message, and let people know the deep mission and the work that you are doing. It's incredible work. You're at the heart of the school. You're making incredible inroads with kids, but we have to be able to throw humility out the window just a little bit and say, here's what I'm doing and I'm proud of it. So that's my last piece of advice as I hand it back to Shannon to finish us up on the rest of the slides.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, because as a librarian, a huge advocate for libraries, I think, what you do in your space is a great way to tell your story. And if it's sharing it, if it's taking pictures and posting it on your school Instagram, or maybe you have a newsletter or blog, and it can be little things, it can be big things, it can be displays, it can be kids in your library, but showing those pictures of collaboration, of creativity, of the way that they are interacting with our library, or maybe a display that is filled with art, those are all things to celebrate and share, and a great way to advocate, just like Bob said, for the amazing things that we do as librarians. So I appreciate you saying that, because it's something that's very, very important to all librarians. And so keep sharing your story. I think that's so great. So this was such a good conversation. I took notes myself, and I can't wait to even think about this. And I'm really looking forward to our next webinar too. But I want to share just a few resources. And this one is so great. It's from Demco, and it is the Array magazine. This month it is virtual, so in the slides I put a link that you can get to this, and so many wonderful articles, and a lot around, like this one's around library shelving. This one was great, making common areas extraordinary, and you can find the past ones too on the Demco site under ideas and inspiration. So I put a link in there too. But we have time for some questions, I think. And so I'm sure there are some, and we'll see if Amelia can ask them for us here.
Yeah, absolutely. We did have a few come in, and I'll remind everyone, we'll plan to end on the hour. So any questions that we don't get to, they will definitely be forwarded on to Robert, Dillon, and Shannon so that we can get some answers. If they're not planning to address it in the next one, we can send you an email and respond directly to your question. So the first one is for you, Shannon. This is from Tara. It says, I'm interested in learning more about how the pop-up libraries work for you.
Oh, yeah.
She says that she's got some construction starting in her library in the spring, and having that could help out a lot.
Oh, perfect. It would. And, you know, the reason that I'm doing it is because we needed more space, but it was really fun because when the architect saw what we were doing around our school, that's actually going to be part of the new plan, is that they're going to stay and even become more permanent. But what I've done is all throughout the school, there's little pop-up libraries that hold different collections of books. Maybe it's book club books for different grade levels. Maybe it's like special, like right now we have one up around, it was like Read Across America last week. So all kinds of books celebrating like books and reading, anything that I can think of that can bring more books to our teachers and to our kids. I love it because it brings our library into the hallways where they always are and close to the classrooms. We even have a pop-up novel effect library filled with like novel effect books. We have a pop-up one that I call our book hub, and teachers can go and get books from there to read aloud to their class. And so I've written a lot about it on my blog, and I've done webinars too with a lot of information around our pop-up libraries. And so feel free to reach out to me too, and I would be happy to either send you things or talk to you too about how they work. And it's really fun talking about space, is that, you know, when you start bringing your library out, it's more things to take care of. And so there's always dusting that needs to be done, organizing. But my 4th grade friend and one of our teachers, she actually has her kids dust every day. They dust those shelves for our pop-up libraries. And so kids love that we have these, and to have them have a little bit of ownership in that is great too. So if you're wondering how we manage that, it's not just me managing those libraries.
All right, this is a silly question, Shannon. How do they check the books out?
We don't check the books out. So
that's what I figured.
Yep, the kids do not check them out. So if they want a book, like say they're walking by and they just have to have a book that's on display or that's being shared, then they can come down and they can check it out if they want. The teachers don't have to check them out. They just borrow them and bring them back. Last year when we did inventory, we had 0 books missing from our pop-up libraries.
Yeah.
So
very cool.
Yeah, very cool. It's really one of probably the best things that I ever did was add those. And it doesn't just have to do with our space. It has to do with, I love that it brings the library into the rest of the school. And I think that that is something that's really made a difference for our kids and our teachers, and even just the culture of our school too.
We're in a food truck era, man. You got to bring the food to the people. You got to bring the books to the people. It's okay. I like
and
it.
the kids love it. You know, like sometimes people they say like, oh my gosh, do the kids bother the books? No, they like love that we have them, and we talk to them about them. They know that it's like an honor and a privilege to be able to have, you know, these great books around them all the time. And so they want that to continue. And I love that giving them a little ownership of that has really helped too.
Yeah, and there's somebody on the call that's like, I could never do that in my school. And I just am always like, start small, set
Yes.
yourself up for success, and don't think it has to be permanent. Like you can start by like putting it out there for like 10 minutes and see what happens, right? So start small and set yourself up for success if you're really worried about how that works in the culture of your school.
Yeah. And that's one thing I will say is I started with one shelf and it was during the pandemic. And it was because I didn't like how the teachers couldn't get books from the library. So I put them on the shelf, called it, at that time it was like not called Book Hub, but can't remember what I called it. And it was so successful. Then I went to our second grade book club. I put that on a shelf and other classes were saying, well, I want a first grade book club bookshelf and I want one. And I'd go to my superintendent and he'd be like, yep, buy more shelves. And so we just kept adding them and it's been just so great and successful. But start small. And yeah, you don't, if it's not a success in your school, then you can always change it. And so do what works with your community.
Awesome. So we've got another question. I think this one's for you, Bob, but actually I might have some input on it. How does one do filming of a public space without violating privacy? Thinking of an application in a public library. And I'll just throw in my experience, because I've gone on a lot of these photo shoots for Demco and filming. We either do it before or after the library closes, but you can also put out a stanchion. Just make sure patrons know that you're filming in the area and what the intent is, whether it's for marketing or not for marketing. It kind of makes a big difference and kind of letting them know what's up in the space.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I've only done this in school libraries, and I do know that a lot of public librarians are on this call. So I haven't tried to pull that one off, so I don't have all the details. But I've certainly been in places where it says, "Hey, informing you that we're filming between X hours and X hours. We apologize if this is something you don't want to be a part of." So something that does that piece can help. But in school libraries, if it's just for internal librarian to look at it, you have no problems with that.
Awesome. So then we've got one from Susie, who is kind of saying, I hope I didn't misunderstand, but why would we not consider the needs of students with disabilities a priority? Inclusive design that meets the needs of all our students, autistic students, and other students with special needs, serves all kids.
Yeah, so certainly didn't mean to lead us down that road. I think, yes, make that a priority. And oftentimes I find that the design solutions that we create for our students with disabilities just universalize. And I think that's all I was trying to get at, was that, you know, please do continue to find ways to solve all kinds of problems, because we have to be the champions and advocates for all those students. But I often find that those design solutions become good for everyone.
Great. And Susie has another great question about thoughts about perimeter shelving. She says many newer designs don't include any perimeter shelving, which I find makes it difficult to create flexible space that can house an entire collection.
Like Susie, you mean, does she mean like outside of the walls?
Yeah, yeah, like on the perimeter of the room.
Around the
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one thing I definitely wanted in our library, because it's such an open space. I was really worried that we wouldn't have enough space for books. And we did have to add a lot of that because when, you know, I think that when they started to really talk about how much space there was a lot of flexible shelving in the middle of the room. And so we did add that around the walls that we have. And we have a very open space. I mean, we have like really basically one super long wall and a little bit of another that's going to have a board. But that's going to house a lot of our books. And then we'll have lots of flexible spacing in the middle, and you know, that area that will have, you know, room cubbies for kids and display and stuff will house too. But I do remember having, really big conversations around that, because when we started, counting books in our collection, that was something that it was not difficult, but it was just different because of the open space that we have.
Great.
Yeah, and the only thing I'm seeing as a design trend around that is that in many of the libraries I help with is that the perimeter shelving exists, but sometimes it varies in height. And so sometimes you'll have a 4-footer next to a 6-footer, and above the 4-footer, you can put some art. Maybe you'll have space between the perimeter where you could have a quiet area or a seat. So it's more of a collection of how to design a full wall and not a full everything 6 foot across the whole span, which I do think visually helps to break things up in some ways, but it is really hard to be a book and resource rich environment with just mobile shelves on the floor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. So Tara asks, what type of lighting suggest for a new library? I currently have fluorescent lights. I try not to have them on all at the same time due to the noise.
Yeah, and I think we know that like as much natural light as possible, right? And I'm in way too many libraries where I'm just like, you should just take the blinds down, right? Like they really aren't maximizing what they have, but certainly the natural light's a good thing. We are in a day and age where new technology isn't as impacted by the movement of the sun or the brightness of the room. But on top of that, 2 other things that if I was designing a brand new library, I'd be thinking of zones of lighting. So if I needed to light up a certain zone, I could do that. Another zone could be a little bit darker, and we'd have those on dimmers. And then more recently, we've been looking at a lot of technology improvements in lighting that actually have to do with the color of the light. And there's actually research that says throughout the course of a day, the human energy, the human circadian rhythm actually responds differently to different color light. So if budget is no question, which is never the case, I'd be asking for zones, dimmers, and color to go along with as much natural light as possible.
We deal with it in our own homes. Now you can buy, lights that feel different. And so we do think about that, even at schools too. And I think that's a really great thing because that does make a difference with our learners.
Yeah.
Great. And I think for our last one, we've got a question from Leah about how could I improve the acoustics in my library? The center is about 25 feet high, could be a 2nd story. And there's another comment from the same person saying that they're in a high school library. Sometimes no one in particular is extremely loud. However, the collective chatter builds and is amplified by our structure.
Shannon, did you guys talk about acoustics in your new design?
We haven't yet. I do know that we're going to have to do something because our space in the center is tall too, but I see what they've done like in our choir room, but I don't know a lot about that, yet. So I'm anxious. I've thought about it because I've seen things like on actually in the Demco catalog and things, but I'm curious about that. And maybe we're waiting. We have carpet in our library, and so I know that will help too, but maybe they're waiting kind of to see, what that will affect, how that will affect us too.
Yeah, and so it runs the gambit for acoustics. So like, hey, here's small things you can try to here's things that cost a bit more. But in really tall spaces, I've seen them retrofitted with kind of these acoustic clouds that hang down. They can be patterned, they can be branded, they can have color on them to fit the color palette of your library, but those can hang down. I know, and I've really been thoughtful about Demco is now printing designs on acoustic panels, and those actually look really nice on like different walls of the library. You can kind of build out a mosaic of these tiles, and that helps. And I would just say that acoustics is about 100 different solutions all kind of cobbled together. And as Shannon mentioned, certainly carpet, if you have that opportunity, helps in some level as well. Lighting actually sometimes equals acoustics, right? If you can dim lights, it dims voices. And then it's just a reminder, I think, in helping our students when we build our norms for our different zones of the library. You know, I'm not a like, you know, this is a zone 0 space, like I don't know, like that. But like, if there's an expectation that if you're in this area, the volume's different, we can work towards that. So I think it can't be a solution. It has to be kind of a buckshot of solutions, if you would.
Great, thanks, Bob. And yeah, Demco also has the acoustic tiles that go in your drop ceiling too, if you've got some fun printed ones. So,
yeah.
Okay, well, I think that takes us to about time. We do have just a couple more questions from Shannon. What I'm going to do is I will download all of these questions and send them out to our presenters so that we can get some answers back to you guys. And Shannon, I know I think we've got a save the date slide for our next upcoming webinar, April 15th at this time. Again, we record these, we email them out. They're always available on our ideas site. So if it's not a time that works for you, we can still get you that content. Obviously, we love to have you join live, but you know, life happens, especially towards the end of the school year. So we won't hold you to it. But it is great if you register then and you can't make it, you'll always get that reminder email with that direct link. So we love that. And I appreciate all of you joining us today. It was such a great conversation and we'll have more of it. I think there's still a lot to learn about library design and I appreciate both of our speakers joining us today. So thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.